Okay, so Porch Talk. We're bringing it back for this week's edition, and we're going to talk on some controversial topics. So let's start off with the most controversial one of all, and that is the subject of women in men's sports or vice versa. Now, you had Simone Biles on Twitter X come out and try to roast, Riley Gaines. She was a politician running for office this past year in 2024, and Riley Gaines said it was talking about a softball team where a boy had changed his gender and they had won like the 4A championship somewhere. And Riley Gaines said, well, yeah, what do you expect when you have a boy playing in women's sports? And Simone Biles, as you guys recall, she's that gymnast who won in Team USA for decades. Long history of success out there. And she kind of called her out and roasted her and said, this is disgusting behavior, that you shouldn't be calling this out. We should be supporting trans athletes. Well, here's my stance on that. So I don't believe in the whole transgenderism thing. I have to say that my views are not indicative of the military at all. I am wearing a military shirt, but my views are my own personal views. So take that for what it's worth. But I just don't think, we already know about President Trump making a push to get transgenderism out of the military under Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth as well. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But the whole thing about them roasting each other over this, and Simone Biles is saying, well, this is disgusting behavior. You're just bitter because you lost your presidential race and now you're attacking trans people. Well, that's not really the case. We're just sharing opinions here. And here's my potential solution. I've said this for years. So why can't the top 1% of women be integrated into men's sports if they're good enough? If the recruiters and the people that run the leagues, whether it be the NBA, MLB, NFL, whatever. You used to see in past years, like in the 90s, a woman would be a place kicker or something like that for a football team. Or back in the 20s and the 30s, you'd have that one woman who was a pitcher to Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig. And then, of course, they may have put on a show that they struck out in a spring training game. Or maybe it was real. Nobody really knew for sure. But if women are good enough, like the top 1% or whatever, let them play. That makes it so where people aren't changing their genders to play in other leagues for participation trophies. Now, let's admit it. Do a lot of people really care that much about women's sports? I'll be honest with you, I don't. I'm not saying that women shouldn't be treated as equals, but when it comes to sports, their bodies largely, on the professional level, aren't typically what men's are. Now, I have no problem admitting there are a lot of women who are stronger than me. I remember I'm obviously not a bodybuilder, as you can see, but I'm very much physically in shape. I'm a runner, but I remember in high school, we had a woman who was our state shot put champion, and she was a lot stronger than me, and I have no problem admitting that, So, but there are sports that are conducive to women being better, like say for gymnastics or figure skating, maybe stuff like that, where it's predominantly a woman's sport. Well, if a man wants to do it, take the top 5, 25%, whatever it happens to be, and let the men join. But we don't recognize this transgenderism stuff because, honest to God, what this really is these transgendered people don't know this, but they are ignorantly participating in a recognition of Baphomet. When Baphomet is that hellish demonic figure that has a man's abdominals, a woman's breasts, and the head of a goat. And that's androgynous or transgender. And people don't, when they are transgender, they don't realize they are participating in that. People don't realize it. They'll probably mock me for saying that, but it really is true. That's what it's based off of. So it's all confusion. And we shouldn't have to, conservatives should not have to acknowledge what these people want to be. If we see something, we believe in God. We believe God doesn't make mistakes, so he made people as they are. Now, I can understand if they have a chemical imbalance in the brain. It doesn't mean they're less people. They still have feelings. They still have souls. Yes, they do matter. It's like a drug addict. I say druggies a lot, but people who are afflicted by drugs, it's a mental disease too. The first time people use drugs, it's from abuse. It's to try to patch over some empty and hurt feelings that they have, either from a family member or a friend or whomever. we know that it doesn't solve that, but that is what it stems from largely. You use the first time as an escape to try to get away, or maybe it's peer pressure when it comes to alcohol or something like that. But regardless, let's move on. Well, before we move on from that topic, I'd like to say if we just have the top 1% of women in men's sports, then they're involved, and people don't have to change their genders for those participation trophies. Like, when I talk about women's sports to men's sports, I kind of almost look at it like, and this isn't, I don't feel like this is being sexist. I just, largely, people don't seem to care as much about women's sports. Now, it might be changing just a little bit when you get players like Caitlin Clark and stuff like that who are generating some hype in the WNBA. But do you really remember who the WNBA most valuable player was last year? I don't. I like basketball. I don't remember. Do you? I mean, do you remember other women's sports? Do you remember, who's the best player in them? I can't tell you that I do. I don't follow it. I don't have time for it. I'll be honest with you. I'm not saying women shouldn't receive recognition. I'm not saying they aren't as important as men. Yes, they have feelings. They're great people. I'm not being sexist. I'm just saying we just don't have time to follow all this stuff. It's an oversaturation. So if you get rid of all women's sports and abolish them completely and integrate the best ones in the men's leagues, that could be a potential solution. Some people have argued and they said, well, it's not really going to fix this problem. I think it will, honestly, because you're not recognizing boys playing girl and being in these sports leagues. It wouldn't work. The recruiting talents would see it and they'd say, well, wait a minute. No, you're not good enough based off your physical ability, your biological body. So let's move on from that. Whether you agree, disagree, that's fine. I can understand. Everybody's got their viewpoints, no problem. I just wanted to throw out my viewpoint. Now, let's talk about Pete Hegseth as Defense Secretary of the military, of the Army, and President Trump. Now, an article came out saying that young people are wanting to serve under Trump, and how the Army has met its recruitment goals 4 months early. And they're lauding President Trump. Now, I can speak on this from experience. I joined the Army on Flag Day, June 14th, flew out to basic training June 3rd, overnight into July 4th, Independence Day was my very first day in reception of basic training. I joined at age cutoff at 35, so I wasn't considered young. Pete Hegseth is coming out and saying young people want to serve under Trump. Okay? It's a little bit misleading, only because President Trump, and this isn't being reported, I only know this because I'm in the military, President Trump wants to trim 80,000 service members from the Army, 80,000 soldiers, and from the active ranks. Now, it's not like he's just axing them and cutting them off. It's like a natural thing, like when your contracts are up, so over a period of time. It's not all at once. When their contracts are up, they're going to be given the option of saying, hey, you know what, we're trying to phase down, and I think that's because he doesn't want us to go to war, which is a great thing. He said that in his first term. He said it in his second term now. He said, I'm the only president that we have not fought in an active war under, and he's correct on that. So you've got the mess of Ukraine and Russia going on right now, and we need to get away from that completely. It's not our mess. It's not our problem. I don't care what other people's viewpoints are. That's where I stand on it. You could have made the same argument for Afghanistan. That's when Joe Biden pulled out and left all that military equipment there in 2019 when I was serving on the active side in Germany. And here you had the Afghan refugees running to Germany. And as cooks, we had to station that. That was right when I was leaving, right after the pandemic. So, or during it, actually. But I just think that no war right now is a great thing, even though 2025 is shaping up to be a very, very dramatic year, and we don't know what's going to happen. There's a lot of things up in the air, but that's his goal. He doesn't want us to be in a war, so that's why he's downsizing the active member. Now, this is actually a good thing. You say, well, wouldn't you want to have the strongest military in the world? Well, technically, you still will. As people are integrating out of active and transitioning into the reserve component, your Army doesn't lose any strength. Those people are going to be your very first ones called in times of war. Active duty, reserves, and then it goes secret selective service, which is your males aged, 18 to 25, I believe it is. And then after that would be a general draft for anybody way up in age or whatever. So that's food for thought for you. Keep in mind, he doesn't want us going to war, but it is a little bit misleading. They're saying all these people want to join under Trump. Well, part of it is because they're downsizing the Army. So it makes it look like we're hitting our recruitment goals quicker. 4 months quicker, and that's part of DOGE. You know, they want to trim the fat of, you know, if we don't need to pay this many people, then we can return that money back to the people next year in 2026. So I think that's a lot of what's happening. Now, let's talk about the Elon Musk and Donald Trump relationship. Everybody's heard by now that Elon Musk came out on his platform on Twitter X and said that Donald Trump doesn't want to release the Epstein files because he's part of the flight log. Well, technically that's true. He had a lawyer, I guess, that was helping, I can't remember the name, that was helping the victims of Jeffrey Epstein back then. And as such, then that would put him on his name on the flight log, but he never flew out to Epstein's private island. If that was the case, the liberals would have roasted him a long time ago. He never would have had a chance to run for president, even the first time, or at least the second time. It would have come out. So with that being said, I just think it's very important to understand that, yes, if you look at that flight log, you do see Trump's name on it, but he didn't fly down to the islands. Now, the only thing that I have a question of, it does show Jeff Epstein flying to West Palm Beach a lot. And that's where I think one of the flights for Donald Trump was, West Palm Beach. If you look at the flight log, you can see that. But it doesn't, I mean, yeah, I've seen pictures with Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein back in the day, but that potentially could be before he even knew that stuff was going on. You have to keep in mind, Donald Trump wasn't a political figure back then. He was a very prominent and rich and influential man, but the stuff with Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton, and specifically Barack Obama, we've seen the picture of Barack Obama in a canoe with George Clooney and going out to Epstein Island, and there was this little Taiwanese girl about 2 to 3 years old, and you can get the idea of what was going on. Let's just say it's not good. Now, there's nothing implicating Donald Trump in any of that. So Elon Musk, it was a pretty disgusting thing that he did. But I have to tell you guys, if you watched any of my previous videos, I've told you in the past, I never liked Elon Musk. I've never cared for the guy. I mean, all his back past history, how he got rich in the diamond mines and all this stuff from his father, and then everything has to be about X. You know, the credit card company failed, and then his son is named X, his daughter is named YXA. It's weird, dude. And now you're getting videos of him looking like a robot, like looking around and all this stuff, and his eyes are all darting all over, and is he a robot? I don't know what the heck's going on. I've said this for years. I've always wondered. Something's weird. You know, did he put a microchip in his own brain? I have no idea. It's really weird. Some people say he's stemming from autism, Asperger's, but Asperger's doesn't make you do that. So I don't know what's going on, but when he came out and he's saying that, oh, Donald Trump needed me to win the presidential election. No, let's back up, Elon Musk. You joined his forces in September, but 2 months before the election happened. And you titled it Dark MAGA with that hat. I went to the rally in Butler, Pennsylvania. I was there for it. I remember. And I said right then on that day, I said, I do not like Dark MAGA. I said, this seems evil to me. I don't like it. I don't know what he's signifying, but it just gave me a very bad vibe. So now Donald Trump is saying, well, he wants to give the red Tesla that Elon Musk gave to him and just give it away to somebody. You know, it's a very strained relationship, and you can understand why. I'm telling you, I've never liked Elon Musk, and his true colors are now showing through. So there's all that. I appreciate you guys for watching right now. These are some pretty controversial topics. It's in the news. This is my food for thought. Agree, disagree, that's fine. But I'll continue to put out more videos of Porch Talk on some of these issues that matter right now in America. So thanks as always for watching. I appreciate you guys. And until next time, Godspeed as always.